Well, when I was in fifth grade, I had a crush on this girl named Carly Sterling. I was a hopeless romantic even then. I even bought Carly Sterling a sterling silver necklace on a field trip one time to show her that I cared and that I paid attention to words. At one point in the year, she even began to like me back, which was a huge deal. I was on cloud 9, or even 10 if it were possible, because you see, I was the kind of kid who did the liking. I wasn't the kind of kid that got liked back. Dude, Weedy, come on, man. Wasn't supposed to be that funny. It was a big deal for me, not only because of that, but also because she was the prettiest girl in my class. Like I did with Stephanie, I shot big shots back then. One day, I got a call from Carly's best friend, Allie. And I remember right where I was standing in my parents' kitchen, gripping their corded phone like something out of Stranger Things, when I heard her say these 13 words. Hey, Kyle, Carly doesn't like you anymore. She likes Caleb instead. Sorry, bye. Like, kids can be cruel. You would think that my little heart might have been broken, and it was. But that wasn't the first emotion that I felt. The first emotion that I actually felt was betrayal. She likes Caleb instead. See, Caleb had been my best friend for years. And I thought, surely Caleb has broken the code. Surely Caleb has done something other than being a full head taller than me and more athletic and more handsome. Surely he has done something else to woo Carly. I felt hurt in a way that I wouldn't have felt if she just said she just stopped liking you. She likes Caleb instead. It turns out, by the way, he didn't do anything. But that didn't matter to me for a while. I was so stung by the idea that my best friend, had gone behind my back that I couldn't even play with him for weeks after that. Betrayal. It's frowned upon by just about every culture around the world. It's a source of anger among business partners and fifth grade boys. It's a precipitator of violence between spouses and world powers. Betrayal is perhaps the deepest way a person can hurt another person. And I know some of us have experienced that. If a stranger says a nasty thing to me, it hurts a little. But if my closest friend says that to me, that cuts to my heart. No one can hurt us like the people closest to us. Betrayal is so powerful, it's so abhorrent to our human sensibilities that it can actually stain someone's name forever. Brutus, who betrayed Julius Caesar. Benedict Arnold, who betrayed George Washington. I mean, when we were looking for baby names for our son, Micah, Brutus and Benedict never made it to the top of the top 100 list, in 2021 or whatever it was, for some reason. And neither did the name Judas Iscariot, who betrayed Jesus. I don't know very many Judases in my neighborhood. Judas is a notorious traitor. And in our story that night, this morning, Judas has already made plans to betray Jesus. He's already gone behind Jesus' back to the chief priest, brokered a deal, gotten his money, signed the contract. But somehow, Jesus knows. In our text today, Jesus is in the middle of one of the most intimate settings with his most intimate friends. Jesus is eating with his disciples, and eating in every culture signals some kind of friendship. But in ancient Near Eastern culture where Jesus was at that time, it signaled a type of friendship, a type of intimacy that you don't just have with anybody. I mean, that's why people got so mad when Jesus was eating with the wrong people, like we talked about a few weeks ago. Because eating meant friendship. And this wasn't just any meal either. This was the Passover meal. This is a once-a-year holiday celebration that not only is a holiday, but it's a holiday in particular. It's a dinner in particular that you are supposed to celebrate as a family. Jesus is eating the most intimate meal with his most intimate friends, his chosen family. And right in the middle of this moment, he announces, "Truly, I tell you, one of you will betray me." Can you imagine being a disciple in that room? Can you imagine how scandalized you would be by that? I mean, imagine you're sitting down with your family for like Christmas dinner or something like that. And you're about to say the prayer, but right before the prayer, Mom stops you and says, "Hey, I just have something to say. One of you is about to betray me." You'd be like, "Mom, are you okay?" And if you were convinced that Mom didn't need therapy, you would be really distraught. You'd be like, "What? Hey, how could you say that? We're your family. It's us. How could you accuse us of something like that? Out of the blue." The people that you love most in the world are sitting, and the people who love you most in the world are sitting around this table. And you say something like that. The disciples, for their part, they were distraught. They were broken by the idea of it. It was almost impossible to believe that one of them, one of the 12, Jesus' inner circle, would betray him. After everything they've been through, after seeing him heal people, after living with his teaching, after seeing the type of person that he was day in and day out, from the time he woke up to the time he went to bed, they saw how good he really was. No, none of us would do that, would we? But I want you to notice something about the disciples' response. Because many of us, if we were there, I think we wouldn't have asked exactly the same question the disciples asked. The more aggressive among us, if Jesus said something like that, like the people who figure we were Jesus' ride or die, we'd have been like, "Who is it, Jesus?" That's the question we would have asked. "Who is it, Jesus? Point him out, and we'll make sure he doesn't leave." The more conflict avoidant among us would have been like, "Hey, Jesus, surely it's not one of us. Surely no one here would do that." The disciples, they have a different question. They have a different response. Did you hear it? One by one, they make it personal. "Surely not me, Lord." Right? Surely you're not talking about me? 11 disciples in that room had no plans to betray Jesus. It had not entered their minds. And yet, when Jesus brings up the possibility, they cannot do anything else but search their own souls. Because you see, they've lived with Jesus long enough to know that Jesus' assessment of them is even better than their own self-assessment. And so his word that one of you will betray, it didn't enter their minds that someone was already actually planning this. They thought, "Oh, well, one of us must be the one who's going to do it someday. Surely it won't be me, will it?" The 11 disciples, I think, are more introspective about betrayal than we tend to be. We tend to assume that's not us. We wouldn't do that. No way, not me. But that's not the disciples. Jesus' comments cause them to do some deep work, to search their heart, to search their motivations. They don't think it's them, but Jesus said it might be, so they have to ask the question. You can almost hear the voice of the poet King David from Psalm 139 when he says, "Search me, God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there is any offensive way in me, and lead me in the life everlasting." I think Jesus was provoking this response from his disciples on purpose. He wanted the disciples to search their hearts. He wanted them to take stock of their devotion to him. Look, Jesus knew that Judas was the traitor. That much becomes clear later in the passage when Judas asks the same questions that all the rest of them ask. "Surely not me, Rabbi." Only, by the way, did you note that he answers it a little differently? They say, "Surely not me, Lord." And Judas uses the word that all the other teachers of the law, the people who aren't close to Jesus, who don't acknowledge who Jesus really is, Rabbi. He can't even quite play the game because his heart's not in it anymore. But he tries, and Jesus says, "You've said so. You've said so yourself." He knows it's Judas, and yet he doesn't out Judas to the group. What we hear between Judas and Jesus is most likely, just a sort of a side conversation between Judas and Jesus. And we know that because there's no record, which would be really strange, of Judas being run out of the room by the rest of the disciples or leaving in any kind of way, actually, in Matthew. And in Luke, the positioning of it tells you for sure that he was there for the meal. No, Jesus doesn't out Judas to the group. He says, "One of you." He doesn't say that one. And when they look for a little bit more clarity, he says, "The one who dipped his hand in the bowl with me," which, by the way, I myself was like, oh, was that sort of like a clue? Where they if Jesus was like, "Well, if you were paying attention, it was Judas in the library with the candlestick." No, Jesus wasn't playing games with them. It was a way of saying everybody was dipping their hand in the bowl with each other. That is how they ate the meal. It's just like saying, "The one who has sat down with me at this table and eaten the food I'm eating will betray me." It's just another way to highlight and heighten the sense of betrayal by someone who is close to you. So Jesus knows it's Judas, and he still doesn't out Judas in front of the group. So why even bring up the fact that someone is going to betray him, if not to call out Judas in front of everyone? It's because he wants the disciples to discern their own level of devotion. He wants the disciples to sit with the question, how devoted am I to Jesus, really? Anyone in this room, including myself, who considers themselves a follower of Jesus, which you may or may not. We got all types of folks here today. But if you consider yourself a follower of Jesus, you, like me, we should be regularly asking ourselves this question: how devoted am I to Jesus, really? How devoted am I? How many of my 168 hours in a week do I spend even thinking about Jesus, much less doing anything on his behalf or with him? And just to put a fine point on it, if the only time we spend thinking about Jesus is here for an hour, that's less than 1% of our week. And that's if we come every week. How much of our energy goes towards things that God is calling us toward, that God is calling us to care about, towards things that are good and true and beautiful, and how much of it just goes to building ourselves up? If someone asks you about your faith in Jesus, for those of us who are Christians, do you obfuscate? Do you say something kind of ambiguous? "Oh yeah, I've been like a pretty spiritual person for a long time"? Or are you clear? Are you straight up with them about who you follow? if it became clear that Jesus was calling you to quit your comfortable job, to do something else, or to move to a place that you never thought about moving before, or to have that hard conversation with a family member that you really were clear you didn't want to have, would you do it? How devoted are you to Jesus? I had a conversation with someone a while back who, at a certain point in their life, believed all the stuff they had learned about Jesus, but didn't want to get baptized just yet because they knew that baptism was a real commitment. It wasn't just like saying like, oh, I'm in the club. It was saying, I'm devoted to you. And he couldn't genuinely say that he would do whatever Jesus wanted him to do, go wherever Jesus wanted him to go. He could think easily of scenarios that if he heard a word from the Lord that said, you need to go here, he'd be like, nope, don't think I'm going to do that. Only when he could genuinely answer yes to the question, will you go wherever Jesus calls you to go, did he say yes to baptism. Why? Because he was asking himself that question when the rubber meets the road, how devoted am I to Jesus really? And it's a question not just that we should ask when we're considering whether or not to follow Jesus or considering whether or not to be baptized, but it's a question that for those of us who are Christians, we should be asking ourselves consistently, weekly, even daily. How devoted am I to Jesus? Surely not me, Lord. Right? You see, probably all of us here like Jesus. Like, maybe not all of us, but probably most of us here, almost all of us here, at least like Jesus. If we didn't, we probably wouldn't find ourselves here. Many of us even serve Jesus from time to time. But it is possible to like Jesus and to serve Jesus without being devoted to Jesus. You can call yourself a Christian, you can even be a pastor and not be devoted to Jesus. In fact, it wouldn't be long in this passage until the supposedly faithful disciples, the ones who weren't going to betray Jesus, deserted Jesus in his moment of need in the garden when Judas came to kiss him and betray him. I think Jesus would have us ask ourselves periodically, just like the disciples, surely not me, Lord, right? Search me and know me. But then there are some of us, in fact, many of us, at least once in a while, who hear Jesus' words and we don't need to ask, surely not me, Lord, we know. Those words sting because we don't need to be too introspective. We know deep down, or even right on the surface, that we have turned our back on Jesus. We've walked away from him for years. We've pretended we didn't know him when our friends brought him up. We've done something deliberately over and over and over again that we knew would lead us away from Jesus. We failed to follow God to a place or to a person or to a task that we were confident he was calling us toward. Some of us are sitting here right now and we already have plans later today or this week to go and do something that we know will lead us away from Jesus. Just like Judas had plans to leave there and go meet the chief priests. And if that's you, my friend, I think Jesus has a second reason for announcing that there is a traitor in the room without outing Judas. I think Jesus announces that so that the disciples can see what Jesus does with traitors. What does the world do with traitors? I think it would best be described as off with their head. That's what the world does with traitors. I mean, in the movies, if you're a traitor, it doesn't matter really if you betrayed a good guy or a bad guy. If that person has any power at all, you're done. It's the one thing that you can do, and a kingpin will bury you in an unmarked grave, or the government will take you out. Traitor is traitor, and everybody in our world has the same response. You cannot be trusted. You cannot be part of our society anymore. You need to go. What does Jesus do with traitors? Jesus announces to his disciples, one of you will betray me. One of you is about to hand me over. And what is the next thing that he does? He takes a piece of bread, and as he breaks it, he blesses it, and he gives it to them. And he says, take and eat. This is my body. Yes, he says earlier on that for the one who betrays him, it's not going to go well. He knew that too. He knew that following through on those intentions to kill the author of life would lead you down a dark path toward death. But what does he do in the moment when he knows Judas is planning to betray him? He offers him his body. After he says there's a traitor in the room, after his little side conversation with Judas where he says, yeah, you know, we both know what's going on here. After that, in no uncertain terms, he calls Judas a traitor. And after that, with Judas at the table, he takes bread, breaks it, blesses it, and gives it to him. And he says, take and eat. This is my body. He hands over his body to the one who would hand over his body. That's what Jesus does with traitors. And almost to drive home the point, he took the cup of his blood and he said, drink from it, all of you. All of you. This is my blood shed in the new covenant, which is poured out for the forgiveness of sins. For the forgiveness of sins. For the forgiveness of sins, Judas. For the forgiveness of sins, disciples who have searched their heart and know that there's something in them that could betray Jesus down the line if they weren't careful. For the forgiveness of sins, take and drink, all of you. He gives his shed blood for the one who would have his blood shed. You can almost hear the poet King David in the room again with his famous line from Psalm 23, you prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. My cup overflows. Jesus, with his enemy at the table, says, take my body. With his enemy at the table, he says, take my blood. He gave it freely. He offers his body and his blood to the one who would hand over his body and have his blood shed. He invites the traitor into communion. No one here, not a single one of us, is beyond Jesus' invitation. No one here, not one of us, is beyond Jesus' invitation. You may think that your personal history disqualifies you. You are not beyond Jesus' invitation. You may think, well, I used to follow Jesus and then I fell away. I don't know if I deserved it. You are not beyond Jesus' invitation. You may think, I haven't repented enough yet for what I've done. I haven't done enough penance, or I'm not as sorry as I should be yet. You are not beyond Jesus' invitation. You may think, you don't know how much I've hurt people. You don't know how much I've hurt even people that I love. I've been a Judas to people in my life. Friend, you are not beyond Jesus' invitation. You may think there's nothing I can do that will make up for what I've done. Nothing I can do that will make up for the deals that I've made, for the direction that I've gone in my life. You are right, but there is something that he has done. And you are not beyond Jesus' invitation. The reality is, friends, that all of us here, every one of us, myself included, are Judas. The Bible says that every one of us has turned away from God. Every one of us has gone our own way. At some point, we have made ourselves an enemy of God. whether through anger or self-interest or just apathy. But that is exactly why Jesus came, to turn the enemies of God into friends of God. To take traitors and bring them into communion. That is exactly why he died, friends. Our sin, our turning away from God and God's way, put Jesus on the cross as surely as Judas' kiss put him on the cross. And yet, he invites you and me into communion, into his death, to receive the benefits and the blessings of his sacrifice on our behalf. Jesus invites us to receive his death as a sacrifice that brings us life. He invites us to receive his blood as a cleanser for our heart and a scrubber for our soul. He invites you to share communion with him, no matter what you have done, no matter where you've been, no matter what you were planning to do. This is what Jesus does with traitors. He invites them to the table. Come, you who are searching your heart. You who are asking, surely not me, Lord, right? Come, you who don't need to search your heart because you know where it's been. Come, you who have turned your back. Come, you who have been planning your escape from God's love. Come. Jesus still invites you. He still wants you. He still loves you. And he still forgives you.